There we go. So we started recording. Thank you, everyone. I'm not the most tech savvy, so I'm just be speaking aloud as I'm going. Great. Okay, so that's all the housekeeping. I'll just start off. I'll say, introduce myself, and then I'll introduce some of my colleagues who are here today. So my name is Ria Lewis. My pronouns are she, her. I am the artist development producer at National Theatre of Scotland, and I am a woman in my mid-30s. I've got dark curly hair, caramel skin, and I'm wearing a kind of mint green jumper. Rosie is here today, so I'll let Rosie jump on the video and then let Rosie introduce themselves.
Hello, everybody. My name is Rosie Kelliger, and I'm dramaturg here at National Theatre of Scotland. I am in my early 40s. I'm a woman. I have white skin, and I have dark brown, kind of wavy hair. And today I am wearing a stripy red and white top.
Thanks, Rosie. Kirsty, would you like to say hello?
Hi. I'm not doing very well with my technical premise just now. My name is Kirsty, she, her. I am Artistic Development Assistant at NTS. I am in my early 40s. I have browny, gingery, long hair. I am wearing a white top and a brown cardigan, and I'm looking forward to today.
Great, thank you, everybody. And also just to say, unfortunately, Nellie, who is Artist Development Coordinator, is unable to join us today. But Nellie will also be a person, if you do email and things, you might get some emails from them, and they unfortunately couldn't join. And so, yeah, just to say, if you've got any technical issues or anything, you can raise your hand or put a little message in the chat function. Great, and just to also say we're aiming to finish before 1 as well. I'll give you a quick overview of this new programme of residencies. So this is a new programme to support artists in developing work, and these residencies have evolved from our older programmes like Starter and Just Start Here. During the pandemic, we did consultations with artists, and we heard the importance of having bigger budgets to develop work, as well as having more time and space in those initial stages of a project. This programme has been designed in response to those conversations and feedback. We wanted to find more ways to bring in artists that we at the National Theatre of Scotland are new to. Also today, sometimes we might say NTS, just as a shorthand for National Theatre of Scotland. And so through this new programme, we hope to create more enriching ways for artists to get to know NTS as an organisation. So in total, there are 12 residencies, and these will take place throughout this year until March 2023. 8 of these residencies are for artists to have 10 days to do some research and development on a project idea. And each of these has a budget of £5,000, and this will include the artist's fee and materials. And these residencies are focused on discovering and diving into an idea and a new project. And so we've called these residencies Discover. And these can take place this summer, so May, June, and then also in winter next year. So that'll be sort of January to February in 2023. The other 4 residencies are for 4 artists, or they could be an individual artist, or it could also be a company or collective, or a kind of cohort of artists working together, and for them to have up to 30 days of studio time, and that's to develop an initial idea a bit further into a first draft stage. And each of these has a budget of £20,000, and we're calling these residencies Develop. And these residencies will also take place from this summer, so from July 2022 up until March 23. So at the end of the residencies, there's a couple of differences as well. So with Discover Residencies, there'll be the opportunity to share what you have explored with peers who are doing the same residencies. So there is an outcome, but it's not as sort of kind of public facing, and it's a bit more of that chance to kind of, talk about your work and what you explored with peers. And at the end of the Develop residencies, there'll be an opportunity to have a sharing. So that could be sort of sharing extracts of a first draft if you're a writer, as well as being able to present some of the ideas that you were exploring, and that would be to invited NTS staff members, as well as some producers, promoters, and possibly some future collaborators of the work. I just want to give a little bit of context on the priorities and what we mean when we've talked about that in the guidance. So as Scotland's National Theatre, we want to have a programme that reflects the many voices and experiences of Scotland. And there are lots of forms and types of work that we would like to develop more of in our programme. And so we're calling those our kind of programme priorities. And for the artist residencies, we are looking for proposals which relate to at least one of our programme priorities. And we have 6 in total. And we split them into values and themes, form, and then background, lived experience. So the 2 that are values and themes are we're looking for work that explores climate justice. And by that, we mean work that is looking at climate change, the natural environment, sustainability, conservation. It could be looking at telling stories of communities who are on the front line, or those who are being hit the hardest with extreme changes in the environment. Another value and theme is that we're looking for work that is joyful and uplifting for audiences. So for that, we just mean work that is kind of, expressing or causing great pleasure and happiness. Another programme priorities are our form. So that's when we're looking for work that can tour to rural and remote village halls across the whole of Scotland. And then also work that is made with or explores new technologies. And then our last 2 programme priorities are on background and lived experience. And so that is work that's by artists who have heritage from the South Asian diaspora, as well as work who are by artists who are disabled, deaf, neurodivergent, or who have other related experiences, including chronic illness or mental ill health. So there's 2, so the application process. For Discover, there's just one application stage, and that's an application form through Submittable. And then for Develop, there's 2 rounds for that. So stage 1 is an expression of interest, which is a form you can complete on Submittable. There's also the chance to do videos and things. And these will be shortlisted. So for the expression of interest round, those will be shortlisted, and then we'll invite some to apply to this second stage. And that's where there'll be another sort of application form, which just allows those artists to kind of go into a bit more detail about the project idea. And for that, we have a stipend of £130 to cover the work on that application. So I'm just going to say a little bit about eligibility. And then we can move on to the question and answer section. So this sort of the residency programme is for artists who are from any art form who want to make a new piece of work that is a live performance, or digital online work, or work that could be a hybrid. It's for artists who have professional experience. So by that I mean we're also encouraging artists who are very early in the industry, early in their career in the industry, but it's also open to artists who are maybe also exploring a new creative role, and also looking for artists whose idea and project speaks to at least one of our programme priorities, and this also for artists who are based and working in Scotland. Artists need to be at least 18 years old. Yes, that's what I say on eligibility now. Also, I've seen, if you've had a chance to look at the questions or in our guidance, we talk about how we're also prioritising artists from particular backgrounds. So that's because we recognise the many barriers in the industry, which further marginalise and exclude. And also we want to build an artistic programme that reflects the diversity of Scotland. So we are prioritising applications from artists who are Black, brown, person of colour, those who have heritage within the African diaspora, the Caribbean diaspora, East Asian diaspora, Southeast Asian diaspora, South Asian diaspora, who also have heritage who are maybe from the West Asian and Middle East diaspora, are Latinx, Indigenous people, First Nation people, also those who multiple heritage. We're also prioritising applications who are artists who are from marginalised genders, so that includes women, trans men, non-binary people, gender non-conforming people, two-spirited people, agender, for example, as well as people who are from marginalised sexes and sexualities, so including intersex people, and those from the LGBTQIA plus community as well. We're also prioritising applications from artists who are disabled, deaf, neurodivergent, and who have from related experiences, including chronic illness and mental ill health. Also artists who are from low-income households. And yes, but those are the ones that we're prioritising, but we welcome applications from everyone. So, those who are also based outside of Scotland's Central Belt, those who are speakers or users of Scotland's minoritized languages, and also artists who are from communities that have been historically excluded as well. So that's all I'll say just now as a little overview. Now just we can go on to the kind of question and answer section. So at the bottom of your screen, you should see a symbol that says Q&A and two little kind of speech bubbles. And so to ask a question, you can click into that and then you can type in your question. If you also can ask your question verbally if you'd prefer. So to do that, if you just raise your hand and then Kirsty can unmute you to ask you to speak. And yeah, if you've got any issues, you can message Kirsty directly. And yeah, to start us off, we've actually had some questions come into us already. So we're just going to say these, and perhaps they might be ones that some of you might be thinking of. But yes, as ever, please just add your questions in. And yeah, Rosie's going to read aloud these questions and I'm going to answer them. So yeah, over to you, Rosie.
Okay, so our first question is, do we select our creative team? That's the first pre-submitted question.
Thanks, Rosie. Yes, we don't have, as at NTS, we don't have to choose the collaborators for your residency. So yeah, we can suggest people that might be of an interesting and a good fit, but absolutely it's about, if you're applying, it's about the artists that you would like to work with. So, so yes, you would select your creative team with our support. So for example, if you're interested in applying to develop and you have an idea of maybe the type of creative people that you would like to work with, say, for example, you're wanting to work with a movement director or a dramaturg, you could include that in your application. You don't have to write an artist's name if you're not quite sure, but if you're interested in the role. But yes, you do. You can select your own creative team. Thanks.
Our next question is, what does first draft mean in this context?
Thanks. Yeah, so we're using the term first draft more in relation to the develop residencies. So a first draft is a term that we use in theatre when talking about scripts, and it's the first completed drafted version of a text. Yeah, when we're talking about first draft here, we're referring to the stage that a project is at and the work itself is at. And normally a first draft it isn't normally shared with the public audience. There might be more sort of industry people that it's perhaps shared with. And so because these residencies are open to artists from all art forms, we're using first draft to describe what stage the work is at. So for example, for a writer, this could be that you've written some text, but it's not a completed version. For choreographers and those working in movement, this could mean that you have some choreography and an idea of the shape of the work. and for artists who are devising the work, this could mean that you have some elements of the work devised, but it's not a completed version. But yeah, if anyone has any more questions about a particular project that they have in mind, you can also email us at artistresidencies@nationaltheatreofscotland.com, which we'll put in the chat as well at the end. Because I'm aware that there might be everyone's project might be at a different point, so just feel free to contact us directly about that. But yeah, that's all I'll say for first draft just now. Thanks, Rosie.
Okay, the next question is, I've already had a sharing, can I apply?
Yes, you can apply. So yeah, if you've had a sharing to producers and promoters who are looking to pick up and develop your work, you are absolutely still eligible to apply. It's just that because these residencies are really for those who haven't had the work developed to a first draft stage yet. So it might be that when it comes to panel, there's a conversation and looking at who's kind of being prioritised. But yeah, a sharing can mean lots of different things. So if you have already had one, then we definitely recommend that you can still apply if you're interested.
And next question is, are artists able to submit to both Discover and Develop?
So we just encourage you just to submit to just one. So you can choose Discover or Develop. And I guess to help you make your decision about which one is best for you, it's worth having a think about your idea and kind of what stage it is at. So if there's something that's a new idea and project that you'd like to explore, then Discover is probably the better one for you to apply to. Whereas if there's a project and idea that you've had and you've had a little time to do some thinking on it, and you've maybe even had a bit of time to even do some initial kind of research and development, but you really want to have the time to kind of delve in with collaborators, then we suggest that you apply to Develop. So yes, we recommend don't submit to both, because just choose which one is better for your idea.
And next, what do you mean by an artist who has had 3 works which have been commissioned and fully funded?
Yeah, so we talk about, because in the application we talk about how we'll be unlikely to choose an artist who's had 3 works which have been commissioned and fully funded. So by that we mean, because we know that projects are funded and supported in lots of different ways at their different stages. Sometimes through Creative Scotland at one stage, sometimes by an organisation or venue. So we mean by sort of fully funded and commissioned is when, in this instance, is when a particular, when your show has been made and been supported by one organisation or venue throughout. So that's be that you've done your development with this organisation and then they've fully funded your project all the way to kind of the production stage in front of an audience. And so, yeah, because so much of this programme is about prioritising artists who've had less opportunities and not been supported in that way. So yes, I can say more on that if anyone has any more questions about that. You feel free to drop it in the chat. Or sorry, in the Q&A. I'll keep an eye on that one. Thanks.
The next one is, I'm working on developing a project at the moment. However, it is a community-focused project and would not generate a professional performance, although it could develop a piece created by community performers. Would a project like this be eligible for either of the residency opportunities? It would, of course, be led by myself and other professional artists.
So yes, and these residencies can also be for community-focused projects and ideas. So the residencies are really for projects which are interested in creating performance work, but we're really open with what that means. So that could be creating something that leads to a sort of public performance, a live art performance. It could be something that is a bit more of a closed performance in the sense that it's maybe not very open to wide public, but it's more for the community performers, perhaps, and participants. Performance that is site specific, as well as kind of more traditional plays and things like that. So yeah, we're really open. So absolutely, if you're wanting to work a project that's community focused, that would be eligible to apply. We've also had some more questions come in from some emails. So we've just added in.
Do you want me to jump in and read those, Ria?
Yeah, is that great? Is that right?
Yeah, cool. So our first one is asking, can playwrights apply? And if so, what information should they include in their application?
Yes, so playwrights can apply. I think you would just talk about your idea. And depending on if you're applying to the discover or to develop, you could just talk about at what stage your project's at. And I guess one of the biggest things about these residencies is we're just looking at how doing these residencies can help take your idea to that sort of next stage. So it would be also including that information as well.
Sorry, having issues with my mute button there. So our next question is, in reference to the Discover residency and the second application question, tell us about the idea or project you want to develop. What specific details, structure and format are you looking for in answers to the question? For example, are you expecting information on the project's target audience, medium, scale, story outline, etc., etc.? There are other parts to this question, but I think I should let you answer that bit, Ria, if that's all right.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Rosie. So yes, that's just, that question is just so that you can tell us in your own words, really, about the project and idea. So, and that's really open. So I guess it depends at what stage you're at, and you can share as much as you know at that stage. So I think this person had asked if it has got a project's target audience, that's really great to include that. And yeah, absolutely. If at this stage you know this is a piece that you want to do online and it's using new technologies, then yes, you should include that as well. Because we talk about our kind of program priorities, that's also where you could mention in that question, you know, how it speaks to our program priorities. So, for example, if you are using new technology, you could include that. I just spilled my tea. Gesticulating a bit too much. You could include, you could include that. What sort of technologies you want to explore and things in that question.
And then the second part of that question was a query about the application question. Tell us about you and how you make work. And the person is asking, I'm assuming you're seeking answers from a theatre perspective because they have worked largely in other media. So I guess it's a question about how to reflect that experience and whether it matters that an artist might have a background in another artistic medium.
So we asked that question as a way to kind of try and make it as a way to feel as, again, being able to, you could speak in, you know, and talk in your own words. So it could be that if it's helpful, if you have a biography, you could include that. It's, you know, if it feels important to share that, or not important, sorry, if it feels relevant to what you're wanting to explore, that you have had background in other industries, then absolutely you can share that. That's just really your chance just to tell us about yourself. So, and we just wanted to we wanted to try and use language to kind of keep it open, which is why we haven't said, you know, write us your biography. It's just a way for you to say, you know, who you are and perhaps what your creative role is. And yeah, so it's quite open. So I think, yeah, if you are new to the sort of performance industry and your application is much more focused on that. So for example, if you've been working in different roles, but you're applying as a playwright, you don't feel like you have to talk about your different roles in other industries, only if that only feels relevant to what you're wanting to explore. So I hope that answers it. I guess it's just really a chance for you to say in your own words, really. And for those that are reading the application, so for the panel, to get a bit of an idea about you. So it's often just how you would describe yourself to someone you're just meeting, really, and what your role is. So that might be an easier way to think about it. Also, just to say that there's in the application, you can also submit supporting materials. And so one of them could be a CV. So that could So if you, for example, did want to say a little bit about the different other roles that you've had, or kind of if that felt important, that what you were wanting to explore was kind of about all the different experience you've had, then yeah, in the CV and the supporting materials, you can add that there. But it's not a requirement at all.
Next up is a query from somebody who is keen to apply for a Discover residency and has a query about the budget. They say that they would be the only person involved in the project, and although obviously their time would be covered by a proportion of the budget, that would leave the majority of that cash available for materials and collaborators. But at this stage of development, they don't know what that material or who those collaborators might be. But it sounds like they're keen to key into the knowledge and expertise and experience of NTS. So I think the question is it an issue that at this early stage of development, they don't yet know how they would want quite a sizable chunk of that budget allocated? And is this something that NTS would be able to support with?
Yeah, thanks, Rosie. Yeah, and thanks. Absolutely. With the budget, we will support you with the budget, and in terms of the applications, that's, you don't need to know the detail of how you want to spend that. That question is just for a panel to sort of have an idea of, I guess, what you want to do with that time. So it's absolutely fine if especially for Discover, because it's for that initial idea, that actually most of the budget will just be covering your time, and then we can have a look at how to spend the rest of that, if that's kind of what the materials are, and things like that. And so I guess for Develop, because those ideas are a little bit further along, we'll also have for the sort of round two, we applicants will be able to have a sort of a kind of a meeting with us to sort of talk through a bit more about the idea, and at that point might be some questions around budget. But so yeah, absolutely, before you start your residency, you don't need to know exactly how you're going to spend it. Just if you have an idea, it's helpful to share, and that's really also just to just about being realistic about what is possible within the budget, because it's really important that everybody pays themselves properly for doing this. And so with ourselves, that'd be myself and Nellie, we can talk to you and support you with the budget.
Brilliant. And our last question that came in via email is actually one that I think is about Submittable, and it sounds like this person has been having some issues using Submittable. I don't think that's something we can get into here without having the specifics of somebody's issue. But what I think it is worth saying is, if anybody's struggling at all using Submittable, drop us an email or give us a call, and we can try and talk you through it. It does, from our sort of back end perspective, it does seem to be working in that applications are coming in. But I would hate for anybody to be wrestling with a website that just feels obstructive and to feel that it's a barrier. So please do give us a shout. And if need be, we can talk to you on the phone and talk you through it if it's something that is just feeling difficult or isn't working for you. So please don't let that be a barrier. Now, that was the last of our email questions, so we'll move on to Q&A. Now, I think some of these have possibly already been addressed, but I'll ask them anyway, and then Ria, if you feel that there's anything else you'd like to add, then you can do so. Somebody's saying that they have more than one concept, and is it possible to apply to both residencies, Discover and Develop, with different ideas? And there's a couple of people who are interested in that.
Great. Yeah, thank you for the questions. So I would say if you're the lead artist, you just apply to one. So, however, if you have an idea as lead artist that you want to apply to as Discover, but also there is a project that you're working on with Collaborators on, then you could apply to Develop, or the other way around. But as an individual, you just apply to one.
Brilliant. And next question, if the idea has been R&D'd before, is it possible to apply to any of these residencies, i.e. the idea has already been explored, but it's still at a very early stage?
Yes, absolutely. Still possible to apply. And it might be that if it already has had a bit of R&D, then that might be more eligible for or not more eligible, but more suited to develop. So yes, you can apply if it's already had a R&D, and also if you've had a sharing as well.
Next question. Do you need to identify your creative team prior to applying for Develop, or can that be part of the process of the residency itself?
So I think by that question, it's thinking of maybe the different types of roles and things, I might assume, just because you don't need to know the kind of the particular people. I would say, yes, that is part of the process. With the Develop, there's also, there's you can do your residency within 6 months. So, recognizing that there might be, you might have some time exploring or, sort of doing at the start of the residency, thinking who you might want to work with through later on. So I think that's absolutely fine. I think it could just be worth in the application if you have ideas of people that you might like to work with, then including that. Or if you don't, even if you just say that you're wanting to have a creative team and use the process to identify that, that's also worth sharing.
Cool. Next question is, if someone was applying for a Discover residency, would you expect a complete written script or more just the concepts and the ideas behind the work?
I wonder if that's to do with like the outcome at the end. So I would say no, we wouldn't be expecting a complete written script. I think if there's perhaps some concepts and the ideas behind the work, it might be that there's also some text and things that you can share. But yeah, we wouldn't necessarily imagine a complete, it might be that you worked on a bit of a first draft, but it wouldn't necessarily be a completed one. But yeah, those who are in the residencies, we will also work with each artist or kind of group of artists to get the project to a point towards the end of that residency. So and yeah, with Develop, with Discover, there's only really about 10 days. So I think especially for that one, it's not, realistically, it's not quite enough time to sort of have in general, I think would be quite ambitious to have a sort of a finished script within those 10 days. So yes, I would say that that's not a kind of prerequisite. You don't need to have that.
Next up, are there any limitations on what counts as materials that money can be put towards? For example, could money go towards commissioning an artist to create a costume or prop item, or renting and purchasing tech to experiment with?
Yes, in terms of limitations, I guess that would just be a conversation that we would have with each of the artists to see what feels best for that project and things. But in terms of kind of absolutely, it could be that the money would be put towards costume and props, technical equipment. Could also be put towards working with collaborators, bringing people in for a day or a couple of days. It could be used for perhaps might be used for purchasing software or something that you need for your practice. It could also be it might be the cost to attend something that is relevant to what you want to explore during your residency. We also have a separate budget for access. So in terms of, but that's more for the artists on the residencies. But it might be, for example, within this project, there might be like an access cost that you want to use within that for in terms of bringing people in to see it. But actually, we do have a sort of separate budget for kind of individual needs, if that makes sense. But yeah, it's really open with what it can be used for.
And I think that's a really important thing to say there, Ria, that that access budget shouldn't eat into the budget for the residency itself, so that I think that's a really key thing for artists to be aware of, that you don't have to be factoring in your own access needs when putting in the budget that is for your project specifically. That's a separate pot of money. Our next question is, I'm a choreographer. Am I limited to what music I could use? Does it have to be original music?
So I wouldn't say you're limited to the music you could use. I think this is making me think it's a question perhaps to do with licensing and rights and PRS and things. So that's something that we could also speak to each kind of those who are doing the residencies about all those kind of things, and sort of intellectual property and what that especially actually if you're something I'll maybe just add in. I don't know if anyone's asked that, but if you are a kind of group of artists working together and perhaps you don't have a producer on the project, something that we can do to support is support you as artists coming together by the kind of agreements that you want to have in place with each other in terms of the kind of intellectual property of the work and what that looks like. So I would say, to answer that question, that no, there should be a limitation on the music. There's what can I say about rights and music and stuff? So there's slightly different licensing things that you could have a think about if you're making if you're going to be responding to the music or if it's just on in the background. There's some things to consider about if it's a work that's been and what platforms and where it's going to be shared. But those are questions that we can definitely go through in the residency. So, but I would say for the applications, it doesn't have to be original music. Depending on just going a bit more about that, sometimes there's quite a lot of if it's a really popular song, it can be sometimes a bit difficult to obtain the rights to. So sometimes actually some people prefer to then work with kind of originally composed music because actually it's a bit easier in terms of rights and PRS. But for the purposes of this, you don't need to have made that decision yet. And again, we can work with you on that.
Totally. I don't think that should be any kind of barrier to the development process, because this is fundamentally different from a finished production, which would be put on in front of people, quite possibly for money. So yes, that's not necessarily something you need to worry about at this stage. So our next question is, if a project for the Develop residency has a creative team for eventual production, including a producer already attached, would this be considered an advantage or disadvantage? The project is still very early in development.
I wouldn't say it's a disadvantage. Or an advantage. I think it's just sharing about your project, because each project is going to be so different and unique, and will have different needs and different ambitions. So I think, if this has already been, especially for Develop, if this has already been something that you're working on and that you maybe even have an idea, just throwing something out here. For example, if you know which kind of more remote places you'd like to tour to, that's something you can include. I wouldn't say it's an advantage or a disadvantage. It's just you would be telling us a bit about the project and what stage that's at. The only thing we're kind of considering is kind of how that it's just at a first draft stage. So I think the fact that a project has had a bit more time to pull those elements together doesn't mean it's a disadvantage or an advantage. I realise that might be a bit of a confusing answer. I would just say that you'd still be eligible to apply. So,
great. Next question is, we are working on an idea about a dance-based video series. Could we apply for the residency, for the Develop residency, to create a first video draft?
Yes. Yes, you can, because also we're looking for work that is new technologies and that could be online or a hybrid, and so yeah, absolutely.
Brilliant. Next question, again, I think we've covered, but just in case there's anything else that you want to add or anything you want to reiterate, someone asking, I have two projects at different stages in mind. Are we allowed to apply with one as Discover and one as a Develop application?
Yeah, so just with that, if you're as the lead artist, you just would apply to one. If you are involved in other projects, you can also be named, that's okay, but you can only apply to one as the lead artist.
Brilliant. And next up, could you elaborate on what supporting material we would have to provide for the application?
So supporting material is just really open. It's just a chance. So maybe here I'll just say a little bit about the application process of the application form, because we wanted to make it as so recognize that forms can be just filling in a form and the time it takes and things like that is a process in itself. But we wanted to try and make it as simplified as we could, and so within the application form, that's also we've included where we've said approximately a certain amount of words. So in one question, we say around about 200 to 400, and it's not the expectation that you need to even write 200 words. It's just saying that's the kind of amount that we are thinking we wouldn't want any more than. And we also have a similar, we've got some similar parameters in terms of if you're sending in video. So with the supporting material, that's just a chance for you just to share a little bit more about yourself and your practice or the project ideas, and just really a chance for you to share a bit more about your work. So that's just imagining that the panel, if they didn't know you, what kind of things would you like to share? So it could be that you want to show, maybe you have some images of your work. There might be some other like extracts of your work you want to share. Also recognizing that also if you're quite early in your career, you maybe don't have things quite yet that you want to share, and that's okay. It's just a chance just to send in some additional material. If you choose not to send in additional material, that's also fine. Your application won't be, you won't be kind of discredited for that. It's just an opportunity. If you want to share more, then you can.
Cool. Does NTS provide use of space as part of the residency, or does space hire costs need to be accounted for in the budget?
So yes, we, as part of the residencies, we have space here at Rock Villa, which is our space in Glasgow. But we're also aware that for some people we're based across Scotland, and so actually doing a lot of your residency in Glasgow just might not be ideal for lots of different reasons. So there will be some budget to cover those artists kind of having kind of space hire and things for where they're based locally. I guess if there's anything out with that, then that might need to come out of the kind of the budget. Again, that's something we would look at and work with each artist and their project on. So for the purposes of application, it's okay. You don't need to know, you don't need to kind of include the space hire cost.
If you have presented a show to the public as part of a final student project, but are interested in developing it further, would this be considered something that would not qualify as an original idea, and therefore that you shouldn't apply for that specific project?
I think because you want to sort of explore the idea further, I think it would still be eligible.
I wonder if it's one of those things that if you just want to be able to do a slightly bigger version of the show, then that might not be something that we would prioritise. But actually, if you wanted to take that germ of an idea for a show and develop it into something that's maybe a bit different, then we probably would be interested in that. I think we're less likely to prioritise projects that would essentially remain the same as their first public outing, but maybe just have a slightly bigger scale or bigger budget. We're more interested in something whereby you're really developing that idea and or developing your craft within that idea, if that makes sense. I don't know if that makes sense to you, Ria.
Absolutely, yeah. Thank you, Rosie. Yeah, thank you, absolutely. It's really just about taking it further, and we're just aware as well for especially for so many artists working on something, you might have, the journey of an idea will have started from something and you might have presented it and that will have changed. So as long as this is, as Rosie's saying, is kind of taking it to a new place. And I think, we have that in the application, sort of thinking on the sort of residencies and what this residency will enable you to do. So just finding a way to kind of be able to sort of talk about how this residency will impact the project.
Brilliant. And our next question is, could you please give more information on what kind of support would be provided for neurodivergent people?
So for everybody who's so we have a new start form, which is basically our when anyone is kind of new to the organisation, they can fill that out. So that's at the point where people can also include kind of their access needs and things like that. I guess trying to think what kind of support. We just work with people on a very individual basis by what they need. As well as I'm just trying to think. Just because neurodivergence covers lots of different things, I guess I'm just thinking of specific things that we. Just in terms of we would have a conversation about what your needs are, what you would like to have in terms of the process, and there's certain things that we can also put in place in terms of when you're doing your studio time and things like that. In Rock Villa, we have a space in the building that's our quiet room, and so I'm wondering if I can say any more. Just that we speak to everybody on a very individual case by case basis, and also for those people who are maybe still kind of finding out what kind of things that they do need and what access needs are, we can have a way to support you to think about creating something that's kind of like an access rider. Yes, I'm trying to think. Another thing that we're thinking of doing, we're working towards doing, is making. This is just people coming into the Rock Villa, but making a kind of welcome to Rock Villa video. So just being aware of at the moment we have a guide that's kind of like it's just a PDF, but it's just a lot of text. So we're looking at making a video for that, and. Yeah, I don't know if I feel that's maybe a bit of a woolly answer to your question, but just to say we'll just work with everybody on an individual case, what people need really.
Totally. And I think also something we're quite aware of is that some people are already very used to having it, they have an access rider, and that's a conversation they're used to having. And some people aren't used to doing that. And we're very happy to facilitate that conversation and support you to draw up an access rider based on your needs and what is going to work best for you. And we acknowledge that people are in their own places and on their own journeys in relation to access needs, which obviously, particularly because of the pandemic, can be evolving and can be quite fluid things. So our aim is very much to be able to respond to that. I hope that's helpful. Our last question on the Q&A, and then I'm aware that we've got somebody with their hand raised. So if you have collaborators you would like to work with, but they don't live in Scotland or have a connection to Scotland, is this okay?
Yes, absolutely. I think we would just want to have a conversation with you about how you would like to work with them, and there'd just be some considerations about what that looks like in terms of working and what support that project needs in terms of working with those collaborators, in terms of being physically in the room, or or how that might work in terms of where you might want to make your work together. But yeah, you'd absolutely be eligible to apply. We just say that for the lead artists that they are based and working in Scotland.
So I think that is the last of our Q&A questions, but there was one participant who had their hand up. Kirsty, are you able to unmute them?
Should be you, Catherine.
Yeah. I just have a question about the lived experience priority. Hello, everyone, by the way, sorry. With lived experience, does that refer to the subject of an idea you might be working with, or is it, obviously, a lot of that will be about things you have yourself, and in my case it is, so does it, I just wanted to find out, is it okay if it's not the subject of what you're doing, but just part of who you are as an artist?
Yes, thank you. It's that the background lived experience is about an artist, their own personal background and lived experience. So, and so it's absolutely not about you needing to also make work about that. It's just prioritizing you as an artist with those background and lived experiences. I guess thinking it from the other way, if somebody was wanting to thinking of who they're working with in their project, because if they've mentioned those who are part of our the kind of program priorities, which are people from South Asian diaspora, people who are disabled, deaf, neurodivergent, or have other kind of related experiences and kind of chronic ill health or mental ill health, then yes, it's more about as an artist. So yeah, just about prioritizing that.
Thank you.
Thanks. Great. I think, well, we've just got 2 minutes left, so I think that's and I think that might be all the questions. Thank you everybody so much for taking time out of your day to come along, and for those for putting your questions in and for sending things. If there's anything that's come up today that you're, after today, you're like, oh, I've got this other burning question, please feel free to contact us. Our email address is artistresidencies@nationaltheatrescotland.com, and so we can respond to your question there. We've also extended the deadline. We were aware that our some materials, so the easy read version was quite delayed coming out, so we have extended the deadline for that as well. And also just to also add in, if you after today and you're thinking, oh, actually I've got this idea but it doesn't quite fit into the program priorities, or I maybe don't want to apply to something yet but I've got something else in mind, then there's lots of different ways that you can talk to us about your work. If you go onto our website on the section that says for artists, there you can kind of see the different things that we're doing with artists, and yeah, you can always invite us to see your work. If you've got scripts and things, you can submit them via Submittable. Sorry, looking at you, Rosie, just check. And you can also we have a program called New Approaches. So we regularly, as a team, and also with creative engagement and kind of sort of programming, we'll look at everything that comes through that email, because that's very open and it's just rolling, and we try to respond to people as soon as we can, but we'll often kind of look at things at sort of an internal panel. So yeah, there's lots of ways that you can kind of continue to talk to us about your work and invite us to things. So don't feel like, after today, if you're still like, this isn't what's right for me right now, that's okay. There's different ways that you can speak to us and see how we can get to know you and possibly work with you. Sorry, I've gone over a little bit, but just to say, this will be saved, and we'll, I think, probably try to add it to the website, and we'll have the transcript as well. And so I just want to say thank you to everybody. Thank you to colleagues Rosie and Kirsty for all your asking your questions and tech support. Thank you to Bruce and Megan, who've been our BSL interpreters, and thank you to Andrina, who's been our captioner, and to all of you. Have a good rest of day. Enjoy the sunshine if it's sunny where you are. Thank you. Bye.